Welcome to Made to Make. Here we talk about creativity, the challenges that come with it, and why we keep showing up anyway. Because hey, we are all made to make. Welcome to the We Are Made to Make podcast. I'm your host, Shannon Grissom. From architecture and ballet to heirloom farming and the arts, today's guest has spent a lifetime creating beauty in many forms. Join me as I talk with Nants Foley about creativity, reinvention, and living a deeply artful life. Welcome, Nants.
Oh, hello, Shannon. It's so good to see you.
It's good to see you. I've got to tell everybody that I've created with Nants in many ways over the years, from her farm to painting to we've collaborated with music and art together. So, she is a creative powerhouse, and I'm thrilled that she's here today. So you've lived so many creative lives, from architect to musician, ballet, fine arts. What's the common thread?
The common thread may be that I have undiagnosed ADD. I am interested in everything, and I like to study something and then squirrel, and then I like to study something and then squirrel. And so my life was not ever planned out. It was just unfolded in front of me. And it has only been as I've moved into my crone era of my life that I see how every piece wove into the fabric to make who I am today. And I've used all the things that I've learned. And I just kind of wonder, if I had learned different things, if I would have done the same thing, probably. I think that's the essence of who I am, rather than what happened to me. So my parents were both very interested in the arts, and my father painted and played the piano. My mother did all sorts of arts, and she was just very creative. But because of that, and because I was fortunate, there were piano lessons, there were art lessons, there were dance lessons, there were all sorts of raw materials around the house to do various art things. And that was really a gift in my life. So from the very beginning, I could see that the people that surrounded me and loved me really treasured art and thought it was important. And I meet lots of people who don't feel that way. They just feel like, oh, sure, if I see a ballet, that's fine. But, if I never see one, that's fine too. But to me, it's integral to who I am. So I think that was the common thread.
That's amazing. You're so lucky to have had that support growing
Absolutely.
up. So I'm thinking about your first job teaching. Even your first job was creative. So
Yes.
Talk about that.
Well, I was in high school, and I had a boyfriend who was an artist, and he was teaching lost wax jewelry making at the recreation center in San Mateo. And they were looking for someone to teach needle arts. And my mom had taught me embroidery, cross stitch, you name it, from a very early age. And Rick's grandmother had taught me tatting, and I knew how to knit and crochet. And so they hired me. And it was really fun, but I thought all jobs were going to be fun for the rest of my life, and I found out differently. But we just got a group together, and they all brought the projects they were working on, and I helped them. And occasionally my skill in a certain area was not great, and one of them would help the other one. So I learned early on that art done in groups is often a wonderful thing, and it's a very it builds community very easily.
Yes.
And that's important to me as well.
So do you think creativity is something that we're born with,
Oh,
or
absolutely.
something we grow into?
No, I think we're all creative. In fact, I have I'm always telling people that they're creative because so many people were told as children that they weren't creative. If they didn't, the thing is, if you couldn't draw, lifelike figures, then you were told you weren't artistic. My early art training, I mean, luckily I had my family, and that was the real. But in school, my early schooling in art was nuns coming in with done projects and putting them on the front board, and all of us copying those. And to me, that is not creative. That is not what art is. But they give us a grade, and if it looked like their picture, then we got A's, and if it didn't, we didn't get good grades. Just something wrong about art education that way. So I think a lot of people are told that they are not artistic early on, and that colors the way you look at yourself forever. But everybody is artistic, and if you have a color you love, that's artistic. If you do something that makes your heart sing, that's artistic. That's the creativity and the joy in life. And so whatever you like doing, or you like seeing, or you like being, just do more of that.
Yes.
And I know
Yes.
it's sometimes easier said than done, but I noticed that a lot of women my age are suddenly getting into creative activities, and some people say, well, it's because I have time now. But I think it's actually because as we get older, we care less and less what other people think of us. And when I was younger, I would never have called myself an artist because I would have thought that was presumptuous, and I felt like other people had to call me an artist, and I would just be myself. But now I realize that we all are artists, and we deserve the title, and stand up and say, I'm an artist.
So, you went to Berkeley. What led you to design as a major?
Really bad reasons. The first thing was I had great handwriting. And you need good writing when you're an architect. You did then. That was the pre-CAD days. The other thing was I was great at geometry. I hated all other math subjects, but geometry I was really good at. Little did I know that I would have to take a year of calculus in order to take a year of structural engineering. And if I'd known that, I might have made another choice. But the main reason was I had older sisters that one was in medical school and one was in law school. So those two professions were taken. And it was my mom who said, well, why don't you become an architect? And I didn't even think, what do I want to do? What do I, and I just said, oh, okay. And as it turns out, an education in architecture, I think, is just a fabulous, fabulous education. Because number one, it teaches you to see your world through artistic eyes. You're always assessing everything. But the main thing is, it's not about problem solving, it's about problem seeking. You can't have a good architectural solution to an issue until you really understand what the problem is. So it teaches you to dive into what you're discovering and really look at what is the main cause of conflict here. And then you find the solution. And that helps in every aspect of your life. So I would highly recommend architectural degrees for everyone in the world.
Well, and then you went on and got your MBA, which is totally unusual for a creative person. So How has that woven into everything that you do?
Well, what happened was I did not find architecture as a career to be much fun. When you're in school, it's all about design and the history and beautiful things and, Morris wallpaper and Eames chairs, And when you are in the field, it's how many light switches are we going to need for this high-rise 47-story tower? What is the most powerful flush toilet for this, application? I mean, it's just, and then it was way more political than I thought it would be. It's dealing with planning commissions. And I think I was really naive about you don't get to just create what's beautiful. You have to live within time and money parameters. So it just wasn't for me. So I went back to school thinking, oh, well, you know what? I've always liked marketing. I could do marketing for architects. And so I got my MBA, which was a fun thing to do, another squirrel. And I met a lot of really wonderful people. Some of them are still friends. But as soon as I got my degree, I realized, wait a minute, I'm limiting myself by thinking that I'm going to have to do this for architecture. I can do this for something else. And so I switched careers at that time and left architecture and went into a startup company that did medical patient account management. And I grew a business that's had 90 people when I got there to 3 years later, 900 clients.
Wow.
But then I got married and had a baby, which is what they always say you're going to do. And I thought I was going to do that. But that's exactly what happened. And my husband moved to take for, a career move, and I went with him. And I ended up in a small rural town in a small rural community in California on the Central Coast. And so there I was with so many skills and so many talents and just no place to go with them. So I looked around and I thought, let's see, business and architecture, how could I make money here in this community? And I ended up becoming a real estate agent and then a real estate broker. And that's that was my main moneymaker career. But meanwhile, I had to do things for my soul. Mm-hmm. So we got a farm and we started raising rare and endangered animals and doing heirloom crops, and that was fun. Oh, we didn't even get to the ballet. Okay, and then the other thing I did was I taught ballet, and that was because when I grew up in San Mateo, there just happened to be a fabulous ballerina from Russia who ended up living there, and she started a studio, and we had world-class training at that place. So I trained to a professional level, but I went to Berkeley instead because I thought I needed to get on with my life. If I'd known how long life really was, I probably would have danced professionally a few years before I did that, but I didn't. So anyway, when I ended up in this little town and I had a child, a daughter, I wanted her to get ballet training. So I hooked up with the local ballet school, and the teacher immediately realized that I could dance, rings around her, and she wanted me to teach there, and I didn't. But later on, I realized that if I wanted the girls in our community to have quality dance, it was, I just happened to have this weird, bizarre squirrel skill. And so there I was, squirreling again.
Wow. Now, speaking of squirrel, let's segue into your fabulous music talents. You've got guitar, harp, piano. Is there one that feeds your soul more, or do they do it all differently?
A piano was handed to me by my family. There was no choice in that. And then when I went to college, I wanted to be cool. So of course it would be guitar. But I never really connected that well with a guitar because I had a steel string and it just tore up my fingers. So when I was in my early 40s, my mom sent me a check for my birthday one year. And there wasn't anything that I was, lusting after. No piece of jewelry, no sweater. We didn't have a bill that was desperate to pay. And so I thought, I think I'd like to take a harp lesson. And honestly, I do not know where that came from. So I found a woman in Carmel and I called her up and she said, "Oh, I'm not taking new students." And I said, "Well, could we talk just for a few minutes and then perhaps you could point me in the right direction?" And so by the time we talked for an hour, she said, "Oh, I can teach you." So I went over to Carmel, and she was this little tiny person, and she was so adorable. She lived in one of those kind of like fairy cottages in Carmel. And I went in, and she had about 10 harps lined up there. These were all folk harps. And she sat me down at one and I played, and then she said, "Well, this is great." And she said, "Here, just take that one home." So, she was going to, I was going to rent it from her. Well, it's funny because she knew nothing about me. She didn't even ask my address. She didn't check anything. And I just left with the harp. So about halfway through the week, I called her up and I said, this harp is not sounding very good. And she goes, "Well, you need to tune it." And I said, "Well, how do I do that?" And she goes, "Well, with a harp key." And I'm like, "No, with your harp key." And I'm like, "I don't have a harp key." And she goes, "You don't have a harp key?" She was 85 and she had never lived in a house without a harp key.
Oh, wow.
So I think she just, they rained harp keys into your house or something. So anyway, I got a harp key and I learned how to tune it. And after I had rented it for about 6 months, for my birthday, my husband bought me my own harp. And so I returned that one. And since then, I've been playing the harp. The harp is a very difficult instrument to play. You hold your hands out in front of you, and then you have to be able to see your music. And if you're playing with other people, you have to be able to see the conductor. So I think that's the instrument of my soul. I went on to buy an orchestral harp, which has pedals and allows you to use more complex music than a folk harp does. There have been times when I have put the harp aside, and I haven't played much in the last 6 years. I keep saying I'm going to, but I haven't. When my mom died, I was unable to play the harp because what would happen is I would get into my music and it would take me deep into my soul, and then I just couldn't do it. So I'm hoping to get back to my harp soon, but I've been saying that for 6 years since I moved here. But I will one of these days.
It's calling, calling, calling. And now for a wee break. Is Made to Make podcast brightening your day like finding unexpected money in your coat pocket? Then help keep the episodes coming. Head on over to wearemadettomake.com. There you can share the show, contribute financially, or simply help spread the word. Every bit of support keeps these conversations going and your inspiration flowing. That's wearemadettomake.com. Now let's get back to the show. So I was thinking about Quicksilver School of Husbandry. You did that for over 20 years. Can you talk about how you started to touch on it a little bit earlier about how that got started, but you had the animals. I know I learned to make cheese with you over there, helped you harvest lavender one year. Oh, and your apricots. So tell me about that experience. It's so rich.
Okay, so that was prompted. Tim's best friend from college died at the age of 50. He was at the gym with his 10-year-old son, and he had a heart attack. There were doctors there. They couldn't save him. The irony of it was he was in great shape, last person in the world that you would ever think would die young. His parents lived well into their 90s, and so genetically there wasn't anything there, and he took good care of himself. So that was a huge wake-up call for Tim. And he had always wanted, don't ask me why, a Lipizan horse. The Lipizans are the white horses from the Spanish riding school in Vienna. And the thing about them is they are very smart, and they're also very brave. And so they can be taught things. All those, they're called the dancing stallions, and all those moves that they do are moves that Lipizans do in the wild. All horses do in the wild, actually. But Lipizans are one of the few horses that can be taught that. They were originally used as war horses because, unlike Arabs, when they're startled, they run away. The Lipizans would plant, and that was a better thing for a war. I don't know if it was better for the Lipizans, but it's good for war. So he knew someone that raised them. So he bought a Lipizan, and we boarded it. Well, a little while later, didn't ask me, he had it bred, and then it had a baby. And so then we had 2 Lipizans. So we were boarding 2 horses. So being a real estate person and being an MBA person, I said, 2 boarding fees added on to the mortgage we're paying now equals the mortgage of a ranch. So we bought a ranch. It's only 5 acres, but and I actually did the math wrong, because when you have a repair in your home, it's X amount of hundreds to repair it. When you repair something on your ranch, it's X amount of thousands or X amount of 10,000s. But anyway, there we were, moved out to the ranch. My mother had just died, and the first money from her estate that I got was just a bizarre life insurance policy that she had. So it wasn't a whole lot of money, but it was too much money to just, let it drift away. So I had an apricot orchard put in. And we chose the apricots because the Blenheim apricots were the traditional crop in San Benito County, but they were all being pulled out so that houses could go in. So we were going against the tide. And since then, it's kind of shifted around, and that Blenheim apricots are very popular again. But we enjoyed that crop a lot. I learned from all the old ranchers how to take care of it, how to graft, how to prune, but we didn't do it as a moneymaker. So it was a hobby crop, but we had 100 trees. Wow. And so every year we would have people come over and pick the fruit, and we'd have a big party, and we would have everybody make jam and pies and you name it, and it was just a fun thing to do. And from that, we explored other opportunities. I learned how to do giant heirloom tomatoes. I'd have these big cages up 8 feet tall with all these delicious tomatoes, and we had basils, and we had lavender. Then we started to add other animals, and we had rare, actually they were endangered at the time, Navajo churro sheep. And we worked with the Navajo Churro Association, and we created breeding pairs with other people interested in saving these sheep. And by the time we were done, they had gone from endangered to rare. So I felt really good about that. But those sheep were the ones that the Navajos use, or the Diné, as they prefer to be called, use for their rugs. And so I learned how to shear and clean the wool and card it and spin it. And I had a little spinning wheel. And started doing a lot of work with the wool. It was just fun. Another thing to learn. We also had miniature Sardinian donkeys, and we had pot-bellied pigs, and Tim's favorite, Tennessee fainting goats, because his father had been from Tennessee and had been in charge of getting the Tennessee fainting goats home from market. And the problem with that is if you yell at them, they faint. Literally, it's a myotonic reaction, and they just stay there for a while, and then they get up. So we learned about so many different types of animals and enjoyed that. We had so many people out to our place because Tim was the superintendent of schools. We had school groups coming all the time. And then we got in touch with a lot of elder housing situations, and the people would come out and they would just love being in our place because they weren't allowed to have pets. We had lots of dogs and kitties, and we had chickens, and they just came out and enjoyed them. So we really enjoyed having that. I would occasionally do, like one year I made bird saver wreaths from just to put them out for the birds, and you put the wool on them so they have stuff for their nests. And you take the fruits and you dehydrate them and put them on there so they have food for the winter. It was just really, really fun to do that. So we did.
What an amazing experience, that whole period of your life.
It was. It was a lot of work, though.
Yeah, but it seems like, and all the work though fed something creative.
Oh, absolutely.
So it's just amazing how that all is just woven together.
Yes.
So how did you go from rural small town to high rise in Denver?
That was me. Okay, so Tim was getting older, and the things that he did for pleasure suddenly became chores and hard work. And he was less and less able to keep up. And that meant we had to hire more help. And that meant I had to keep working. And I suddenly went, I think I'm done here. So we started a 5-year plan. I started a 5-year plan. I did talk to Tim about it, and this is the first time that I used manifesting, and I actually did it. And that's why I know it works. Okay, so here's what happened. It was 2015, and I said, okay, we need to get out of here. We can't be on here as we get older. It's not sustainable for us. It doesn't feed our soul like it used to. And so I was never the country girl. I was always the city girl. So I said to Tim, I would like to go to an urban setting. Here's what I want. I want to go to a city that's fairly affordable and has a vibrant arts community. He said, okay. So the first thing I did was I changed all my computer passwords to pick, that's my dog's name is Picasso, pick in CO in 2020.
Wow.
Don't worry, they're all changed now, so don't try to hack in. And that was the first thing. And then I started doing 3 things every day that would lead me to being in that position in 2020. And I often wonder if I had said in 2019, if it would have happened in 2019, or whether I just kind of knew it would take 5 years. Anyway, so like at the beginning, it was things like we looked at cities all over the U.S. and we had certain criteria. Tim didn't want bugs. I didn't want this. Da 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 da. And we ended up in Denver because it is a fabulous place. But the main reason was Tim's favorite brother had lived here, and we'd been out many times to visit him. And we love his wife, Pat, and he died, and we came to Denver to be her family. And it turned out to be a good thing because a couple of years after we moved here, her only sibling died. So we are her family, and she's our family, and we love that. So I started looking at all the, I'd be on all the real estate websites, and I found this place that sounded fabulous, and it marked off all my boxes. And so I knew that I could be happy there because I was an architect and also a real estate agent. I felt like I could translate a listing and really understand what it might be like. So I liked this one building. So Tim flew out to see Pat and to look at the building, and they both gave it 2 thumbs up. And I was looking at a certain floor plan facing the city, and they thought they were great. There were 3 of them on the market at the time. So we started getting our place really ready, and we put it on the market, and it amazingly sold immediately. And so we went to make an offer, and the 3 places I had been looking at were gone. So there wasn't one that was 1,300 square feet, 2 bedrooms. So I had to go up many stories in our building and down some square feet. And so for 1,100 square feet, we look out over the west over the Rockies. And little did I know how wonderful that would be. But sight unseen, we made an offer. It was accepted, and we moved to Denver.
Wow.
Yeah. As you will remember, 2020 was that there was something called, what was it? COVID. Yeah. So it was a very interesting time to be moving cross country, but we bravely went through it, and we're really glad. Getting off the farm was very interesting. We had a 4-bedroom house with a 3-car garage that a car wouldn't fit in. Oops. A greenhouse, a 5-stall barn with a tack room and a hay storage. We had to get rid of so much stuff. And I learned a lot about myself, and that is that I don't need things. I didn't have the time, the resources, the energy to try and sell things, or even to get them to, sometimes you say, oh, I bet so-and-so would like this. I'll get it over to them. No, I did this thing where I would, every day on Facebook, I would put a picture of something, and I'd say, this is free. Come, if you can come pick it up today, private message me, I'll give you my address. And we got rid of most of the things that way. But it was quite the freeing thing. Tim was responsible for rehoming the animals. I did everything else. The funniest thing, though, we had a blue and gold macaw that we loved, but we didn't think it would be right to bring him with us because he squawked really loudly every afternoon at 4:00. So we rehomed him, and when we arrived here, it turned out the people who live above us were in the penultimate floor, so the ones at the top floor had a blue and gold macaw.
Oh, wow. Does he
lucky
squawk?
moved in. Yeah, it squawks. It actually has died since then, but it taught me that all those things you think are really important to you, they're not. And sometimes you have to let go of the things you love in order to allow the universe to bring you the things that you will love just as much, differently. So the biggest thrill about where I live now, I love the ballet. I love to go to the ballet. When I lived in Hollister, I used to drive to San Francisco, which was 90 minutes away, watch a show, and drive back. Here, I walk out my door, I go half a block away, there's the Opera House, and I go there. By the time the ballet's done, I come home, I get in my bed, I can look out my window and see the cars leaving the parking garage, having gone to the performance. So I feel really smart when that happens.
Well, and your art studio is pretty close to your house too, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It is a block away.
I am loving the collage work that you're doing right now. Fabulous pieces. How did you get started in that medium?
Well, actually what happened is I fell in love with jelly printing.
Ooh.
Do you do that ever?
I don't know what that is.
Oh my gosh. Okay, you get these pads and they're jelly and you put paint on them and then you put marks on that and then you put a piece of paper over it, pull it up, and you have a mono print.
Ooh.
And they are truly it's so much fun. And it's quick. So it's not like you can get a beautiful piece of art in 5 seconds. Of course, you can get a dog too. So anyway, I'm doing this and I'm just having a great time. All of a sudden, I've got piles and piles of paper. And I'm going, oh dear, what shall I do with these? I don't want to just recycle them. So I started doing collage. And collage is just so much. I do acrylic painting. My brushwork is not great. So with collage, you cut it out. And so you have beautiful brushwork.
Yes. I love
But it
it
is really fun, and I would recommend you play with it sometime. In fact, I recommend you come visit me, and we'll do it here.
That sounds good. That sounds like a deal. So now you're heavily involved in the visual arts as well, and I know that you've got a timeshare in Puerto Vallarta, and you take your artist friends there. So talk about that.
Well, I always wanted to go on those art retreats that everybody has, right? But they're like $8,000, and not that I'm saying that it's not worth it. I don't know. I haven't gone, but I just can't afford that. So it suddenly occurred to me, Tim and I have a timeshare and we have 2 weeks and we never use the second week. We only use the first week. And I thought, well, maybe I should use the second week and go with some girlfriends. And so I just got a group that were all artistic. We all bring down like the face masks and the hand masks and the foot masks. And the place where we go has $25 massages on the beach.
Wow.
Once you walk out of the resort, of course. So it's just a wonderful, relaxing place. And I bring my art stuff everywhere. So I always have that. But the last times I've asked the other women to bring an art project that they could show and share with everybody. And so we do art every day. We work out, we stretch. We try and have really healthy meals. Of course, then there's the wine and the margaritas, but that's a whole other story.
Wow. It sounds wonderful. So what would you say to someone who doesn't think they're creative? Because I believe that we all are too. What would you say to somebody, or how would you encourage them to start something?
So it is a mindset. One of the most interesting books I ever read was suggested to me by my one of my therapists. Notice I say one of my therapists. That's a whole other story, but we won't go there. And it is called The Care of the Soul by Thomas More. And not Thomas More like Thomas More, the guy from the England in the Henry VIII time. But the concept that he introduced me to was the house poem. Now, don't just let your house fall around you. Figure out, look at a corner, make it a poem. Make it a poem that will resonate in your life. And you just keep doing that until your whole house is a house poem. And that was like such a eye-opener for me. I'm not sure exactly why, but I realized that I can create beauty in any setting. Of course, everyone should read Viktor Frankl's book because that is just amazing. The other one that really helped me was Julia Cameron's The Artist's Way. Yeah. And she presents this whole program. It was based for on people with writer's block, but it works for any kind of life. Yeah. And she teaches you how to pull that creativity out of you. So she has you write first thing in the morning, and she has you take yourself on a date every week, and you just walk through these different programs. And someone had said to me, told me about the book and said, this book changed my life. And I thought, yeah, right. But I went and I looked on Amazon and I read the reviews, and it was like, this book changed my life. This book changed my life. This book changed my life. This book is total crap. This book changed my life. So I realized there were two types of people. But if you get it, you get it. And it did change my life. And I went back on Amazon and I wrote, this book changed my life. And it was funny because I'd never written a review on Amazon before, but I felt compelled. And so the other thing is that I've been lucky enough to have mentors in my life. And you never know where they're going to be. One of the strongest, most wonderful mentors in my life was a woman named Dorothy McNett. And she owned a cooking store in Hollister. And it was a fabulous, fabulous place, but she taught me how to cook, but how to appreciate food, how to plate it, how to feel good about the dishes that I used, how to make. She doesn't know this. She's passed now, but I used to hate to unload the dishwasher, and I thought to myself, I have to find a way to make that a more pleasant job. And then I realized I could just pick up each item out of my dishwasher and remember, this I inherited from my mother. This I bought from Dorothy. We had peach pie on this on Tim's birthday. And so everything became a piece of art in my life. I've always looked for who I'm learning from, what I'm learning, how that can make my life more beautiful. And if you look for it, you find it. Yes. So I always say, look for the miracles and look for the glimmers. The glimmers are just the little things that make your heart soar when you're least expecting it. Yes. And you, Shannon, have been a glimmer in my life.
Oh, thank you, Nance.
I took oil painting from Shannon. Fun times. And I have lots of Shannon's work in my house. And I love that too.
Thank you. Well, you're just so inspiring, and I hope people can see, especially the ones that don't think they're creative. There are everything. We are creating our lives, and so and the choices we make. And so I think it's just a matter of choice.
Yes. Intention.
Choose to believe that you are, and create what you want.
That's right. And it's hard to get started with that. What I find helps me is to set intentions, and then I create little rituals around those. Like before I paint, I light a candle. I'm a big one believing to smudge sage. Now, do I believe that sage is magical and that it's going to take bad stuff away? I don't. What I believe is when I do that, I'm introducing a scent that I love, and I'm telling the universe I'm open for good things to happen. And that's when they come to you. So I'm pretty witchy, but it's not that I think the little rituals or the incantations do anything. It's all about intention.
Yeah.
And letting the universe know what you want. And you can call that God, you can call that whatever you want, but for me it's just the universe.
So where can people find out more about you?
Okay. So I have a blank website. I got as far as buying the domain name, which is going to be coming soon, probably in the next 6 months, but that's nants.art. But I'm on Facebook, and I'm just Nants Foley, and I live in Denver. And I'm always open to talk to people who want to talk about art. So I have a large network of people who are artists that I keep in touch with, and I love that. That's wonderful. But so I'm always open to hearing what people are doing and seeing what people are doing, and I'd love to hear from anyone.
Great. Well, thank you for being here. You've been incredibly inspiring.
You're inspiring too, Shannon. I'm so glad to be your friend.
Aw, thanks. Okay, guys, that's a wrap. Please be sure to like, subscribe, and share so that I can bring more inspiring episodes to you. We'll see you next time.